we live in a world of outrageous pain, right? And the only response is outrageous love, as she whispered to me once a decade ago. And you can feel the outrageous pain, but you can also feel, which is our topic today. Our topic today is, and so if I can, we're in the tree of life, conversation X, right, on the tree of life. I don't remember what number, but we're number X. And so we're looking at the tree of life, which is core to the interior sciences of the wisdom of Solomon. And we're going through each one of the illuminations, each one of the Sephirot, each one of the expressions of the tree of life. And there are 10 Sephirot, they're called, in the tree of life. And we've talked in depth, Andrew, that a Sephirah is not just illumination, it's not just light, it's a story, a particular story of the divine. And each one is a script of divine desire. Right? And each one lives in us. We participate in it. And just in those few words, we're kind of actually reframing the entire way that the tree of life is studied in a kind of radical way, but not in a kind of, liberal Protestant way. You kind of make up what you want and impose it on the text and pretend like it has something to do with the text. No, this is actually the deep structural reading of the text. And we've now arrived in the tree of life, and maybe we can place the tree of life in the chat box just so people, we do that every week, anyone who wants to see it. So we've now arrived in the tree of life at the, I don't know if I can't quite see that one.
Tiferet.
At the part
Tiferet,
right, which is called Tiferet.
Tiferet, thank you.
Tiferet, which is in the central line. And if you're looking at the tree of life that Claire placed in the chat box, it's in the central line. It's called the Kava Emtsei. It's the central line. And it's the third circle. It's the second yellow circle, but the third circle. And this dimension of the tree of life, and the tree is called Tiferet. And Tiferet means beauty.
Beauty, yeah.
So we don't only live in a world of outrageous pain, and we say we live in a world of outrageous pain, the only response is outrageous love. We also live in a world of outrageous beauty.
Indeed. And also the tree, it seems to be in the center of the tree. Is there a reason for that?
Yes. I mean, there's what's called the left-handed emanation, which is the left-handed line. And then that's called the Atzilut Smalit, the left-handed emanation, the left-handed path.
Yeah.
It's the path of the left-handed stories or scripts of the divine. Then there's the right-handed path. And then there's the Kava Emtsei, the central channel. Right? The
central channel, yeah.
Right. And this is the central path. And that's a conversation what each of those mean, which maybe we'll bracket for now, but it's a great observation. But
I mean in the center of the entire tree. It's in the central channel, yeah. But it's in the heart space in a sense, right?
It's in the heart space. It is the heart space.
It is the heart space. That's what
It is the heart space, right?
Understood.
It's the center of the tree. And it has another name, which is Shalom. Shalom. So Shalom, Shalom, which is translated loosely as peace, but really means wholeness, that which is whole. Shalom, right? So Tiferet, beauty, is Shalom, that which is whole, and it's at the center of the tree because it's the wholeness that brings all the parts together in a larger whole. That's its nature. Right? So the nature of Tiferet is beauty, and beauty is, and I'm so excited to talk to you about Tiferet, so we're going to talk about beauty, we're going to talk about wholeness today, we're going to talk about heart. So again, the name of the Sephirah, everyone, is Tiferet. Tiferet is Pe'er, beauty, resplendent beauty. Its second name is Shalom, wholeness. Andrew, you point out it's at the center because the nature of beauty is to integrate conflicting and contradictory streams into a larger symmetry, into a larger wholeness. That's really what beauty is, right? Beauty's never, you never say about a person, right, who is one-dimensional, simple, who splits off other dimensions, but they're really, really good at one dimension. You don't say they're beautiful, you say they're talented, right? In other words, beauty is the capacity to weave together into a whole, into a new symmetry, different parts that, because of the right relationship and the depth of contact between the parts, a new wholeness, a new shalom is generated, which is a new beauty. That's what beauty is. Does everyone get that? If we just stop there, we could go home. Worthwhile, right? Simona, right? It's beautiful, right? It's beautiful, right? That's what beauty is. And that's what beauty is, right? So a beautiful man, a beautiful woman, a beautiful piece of art, a beautiful piece of dharma, right, is not one-dimensional. It's not merely aesthetic, right? It's that which turns the polarity of contradiction into the wholeness of paradox. That's what beauty is.
That's beautiful, yeah.
That
Well, and it goes along with, in terms of our previous discussion, which was boundary and non-boundary, and this sort of, Gurdjieff would call it the holy, like, affirmation and negation, and then reconciliation would be the center one. I mean, I'm using funny language here, but
no, it's good language, brother. It's good language, right?
I think it's
please.
Oh no, I mean, I was just thinking about this because I've been studying a bit of Gurdjieff recently. He talked about the holy affirmation and the holy negation, which is the same thing as boundary and breaking a boundary, and then he talks about the holy reconciliation, which seems to be a bit some part of shalom. Seems to be a bit of the heart is what reconciles the two.
That's right.
Dynamic forces.
I mean, the heart is exactly, I mean, two things. One, I don't want to go into this aside. Gurdjieff was familiar with the tree of life, number one. Let's just crack that point. But two, the heart is the reconciler, right? In other words, how could it possibly be, right, that two people, right, with different personalities and different early histories and different sets of desires, right, and different, right, dimensionalities, how could they possibly live together in union? So it's only the heart that reconciles opposites. Lovers are reconciled by the one heart, by the one love. And the one love, the one heart is Tiferet, right? Is this dimension of beauty. And let's see if we can find it. And by the way, just a parenthesis before we kind of go into it, this notion and the interior silences of Solomon of Tiferet as the wholeness, which is the beauty that emerges from the invisible symmetry, right? That brings opposites together in a holy paradox, right? That notion is also alluded to, and I didn't read it there. As I was reading it, I noticed it was there. It's the kind of thing you would miss it if you weren't reading carefully. But in Whitehead's Process and Reality, Whitehead has this kind of idea of beauty. Whitehead talks about goodness, truth, and beauty, and he says beauty is the highest of them all. And that actually the intrinsic value of cosmos, towards which cosmos yearns, the appetition of cosmos for Whitehead is for beauty. But by beauty, he doesn't mean a tinsel pseudo-erotic version of beauty. He means a beauty which is the coherence in which all opposites dance in a new cacophony, right, of wholeness, out of which emerges a new quality of attention, a new quality of just depth and color and possibility.
Yeah.
So that's just wildly exciting. This is this new story of the divine. It's the story of beauty, which is the story of opposites, right? Which become paradoxical.
And it occurs to me that truth without beauty is somewhat impotent, and goodness as well. That they can't function, or they can't be moved into the world without becoming beautiful in some sense.
In other words, these three lines, goodness, truth, and beauty, are actually inseparable, right? And it'd be great, as long as everyone can let us see your faces, so we can just kind of see everybody. We can kind of feel each other here. We can see each other's beauty in the best way, right? And we can kind of model that and feel each other and see each other. And so I'm kind of putting on full screen so I can just, see everyone's face, which is just a delight. Okay. So Andrew's talking about this very important idea, which is there is no truth without beauty, right? Right, my friend Angel, right? Truth animates beauty, right? Of course it does. And beauty animates truth, and goodness is both true and beautiful. So they're interdigitated, they're inter-included, right? Right, Jane, they can't be, right, split from each other, right, in any way. And I want to perhaps, Andrew, bring something to bear here, my friend, which is we place under the line of beauty, we place pleasure. So
Yeah.
pleasure, oneg, in the language of the interior sciences of Solomon, oneg, pleasure, the character, Shabbat oneg, right, says the prophet, Sabbath shall be called pleasure, right? We pleasure, we don't associate pleasure with truth. We don't even associate it exactly right with goodness, right? We actually associate pleasure with beauty. But that's not quite right. Pleasure is actually, and here's this wildly paradoxical notion, right, which is that pleasure is actually the source of all ethics. Ethos comes from pleasure. Ethics come from pleasure, right? We think that in order to be, right, David, ethical, you have to kind of deal with the pleasures. But actually, pleasure itself, and Epicurus had a sense of this as a pre-Socratic, but he was a kind of proto-materialist. He was thinking about it in kind of more, pre-Socratic terms, but actually the lineages, particularly Solomon, has this notion of hedon as the source of daemon. And the Greeks made this false split between hedon and daemon. Hedon, right? Pleasure, daemon, meaning. Yeah. But no, hedon and daemon, right, Jonah? Right? Good to see you. Hi, Jonah. Right? I'm seeing Jonah with his kind of good beard and his great glasses. And he's kind of looking wise and sagely over there. Right. So that's our sage. He's our official sage. Someone's got to be a sage here. Jonah's got the sage look. Okay. So let's be sagely here, right? And that's hedon and daemon are not split. The split of hedon and daemon is the source of corruption. Right? Pleasure is the source of ethics. Hedon is the source of daemon. And I want to say something dramatic, okay? This is like just we can kind of get this because this is where beauty lives. So I want to say something kind of shocking with your permission, Andrew, and almost obscene, but beautiful and true, which is a person walking to the gas chambers in Auschwitz in 1944 in alignment with the integrity of their lived principles experiences more pleasure than the Nazi with the gun, who has full power and domination, who goes home afterwards to eat a big dinner.
There's stories about people dancing into the gas chambers even. I mean, that sounds terrible, but there are stories like that of people so ecstatic that they and so it connected.
Pleasure, right? There's an aesthetic, there's a beauty to there's a beauty to truth.
What I was going to say, Mark, is that pleasure, it doesn't necessarily encompass beauty entirely, because beauty is full of pain as well, it would seem to me.
As is pleasure. So this is the thing. So let's write. Our myth is that the opposite of pain is pleasure. But that's actually the definition of pseudo-eros. In eros, the opposite of pain is comfort. The opposite of pain is comfort. And when I go to the opposite of pain for comfort, I wind up comfortably numb, as some band sang at some point, in time. We don't want to date ourselves, right? But actually the opposite of pain is comfort, not pleasure, right? Actually, pain and pleasure are inextricably bound up. I mean, Andrew, you and I share a lot of things, but one of them is that we have kids, right? So if I asked you, what's our ultimate source of pain? Kids. Right?
Yeah.
What ultimate source of pleasure?
Sick kids.
Right. Right. But in other words, love elicits enormous love, children. Right. Beloved, elicit, right? I mean, Jane, isn't it true that love is our deepest source of pleasure and pain at the same time? Right? Of course that's true. Right? We know that's true. right? In other words, right? It's true pleasure, right? Is when pleasure and pain, right? The holy and the broken, hallelujah, right? Live and they're inextricably bound up. And so beauty is that which holds the contradiction, right? And so in a non-beautiful world, pleasure and ethics are opposed to each other, right? Right, Lane, does that make sense? In a beautiful world, pleasure and ethics are inextricably bound up. Pleasure is the source of ethics, right? And I actually will know what's ethical by knowing what's pleasurable. And I want to get this, it's a very deep thing. But now what's pleasurable is not my surface pleasure. It's not my addictive pleasure, right? Pleasure itself, which is the quality of Tiferet. Tiferet is the beauty, which is the beauty. It's beauty, which is truth, which is wholeness, which is why if you look up in the Zohar, right, actually the term itself, Tiferet, is beauty. Tiferet's also, we said, shalom, wholeness, and it's also called, you guessed it, emet, truth. Of course, emet, truth. And truth comes from the dialectical wholeness of opposites. And I can hold that complexity. And so the deepest complexity, the deepest beauty is the realization that pleasure is truth. But pleasure is not pseudo-pleasure. Pleasure is actually a skill. It's a skill to actually discern what actually gives me pleasure. Right? What actually generates for me, right, the eros, right, of pleasure. And I get pleasure from cheap wine, but that's surface, that's pseudo-eros. Yep. Really great wine. Yale has a wine tasting course, right? I've got to cultivate that pleasure. So it's, we begin to get a sense of this new script of divine eros in the tree of life, which is the script of beauty, which is the script of pleasure, which is the script of beauty that embraces opposites in a larger symmetry, which is pleasure, which is ethics, right? So we begin to enter an entirely new world. Maybe last sentence, and I turn it to you. There was I'll just say his first name is Rand, a very, very lovely man. And he was on our board at the think tank many years ago. And again, a beautiful man. And he lives in a particular state. I don't want to give away what state, but it's a southern state, which is, quite conservative. And I had sent him an invitation to a course we gave in 2014 on pleasure. And he said that somehow someone in his consulting firm, somehow that went around and it caused an entire stir, right? And an entire kind of controversy and almost scandal that Rand was going to course on pleasure. Because by itself, the very term pleasure in our association feels decadent, right? Right? Yeah. Like, you tell someone, someone says, what do you do? And you say, I'm a pleasure seeker. Yeah. Right. You tell your mother you're going out with a pleasure seeker, see how far that goes. Right. Yeah. So, right. I mean, the term pleasure itself is decadent, and decadence is decadence. Right. It's kind of lost the flow. It's lost the eros. It's lost the dance. But pleasure is actually the opposite, right, Shati? Pleasure is the ability to place attention, right? To place attention, right? To be in the cadence, to be in the flow, not to have my attention stolen, to bring opposites together, to hold them in their wholeness, and to experience their unimaginable beauty. Like, wow, right? That's this quality of divinity. And so I'd love to go into this more, but just passing back to you, brother, I mean, it's an exciting new dimension.
No, I mean, I think you're expressing what attracted me to the tantric traditions in general was their embrace of pleasure, whereas it seemed like sutric religions or immoralistic religions or religions that had many laws and codes about sort of, about giving things up, giving up pleasures. It seems to be very deep in the Protestant mind, and yet at the same time, there's a perversity, right, there that goes along with that lack of pleasure in the kind of utilitarian Protestant mindset, which leads to kind of pornography and sort of pseudo eros as you described it. So I think we need a sophisticated notion of pleasure, and I think that is deeply related to Tiferet and beauty.
No, it is, and I apologize for moving around. I was trying to find a way out of the sun, right? To kind of, and find my way. I always want to find our way into the sun, but I'm at this moment looking for a way out of the sun just for a moment. So let's see if we can find this. So the tantric traditions are not hedonistic in the surface way of being hedonistic. They're hedonistic in the sense of what we might call the principle of non-rejection. Well, that didn't work. Okay, let's try.
You said that before, yeah.
Right. So this principle of non-rejection is this principle that says that pleasure itself is the fabric of cosmos. So, for example, in a series of articles, Stuart Kaufman, who wrote a number of very, very important books, right, was hanging out with his wife one night, and I don't know his wife. We have actually a couple of mutual friends, but I've never talked to her. But she writes about biology and emotion in quite sophisticated ways, kind of sophisticated scholarly articles. She doesn't write a lot. She writes very little. But in one of them, she writes about, and I want to quote the term from her, and although I might be using it slightly differently, but it was her term, and I'm excited. I love quoting people's terms. Something we should all do. We should always quote when we use a term, right? So her term is quantum hedonism.
Quantum hedonism.
Quantum hedonism. It's a great term, right? And quantum hedonism. So now I'm going to move from Catherine into the Dharma, to CosmoErotic Humanism, and into Tiferet. Quantum hedonism actually is, though, accurate. In my term for it, I recognize the term. I don't know if anyone else caught it in her article, but she's referring to, and it's a beautiful term, to what I talk about when I talk about allurement. So allurement is pleasure. Right? The allurement between subatomic particles is talking about a pleasure that lives between subatomic particles. And if you would put a gun to my head, right, and you were channeling Andrew Clint Eastwood in Dirty Harry, and you say, make my day, right? Give me one sentence. What drives evolution? You get 10 words, right? And, and you add it to my head, and it was my last second, I would say, evolution evolves, 6 words, because it feels good. That's evolution. That's the whole thing. It's one sentence. But I mean that not metaphorically. I mean it not sarcastically. I mean it not cutely. I certainly don't mean it in any New Age way, which is anathema. I certainly don't mean it in a fundamentalist way, which is even worse, anathema. I mean it as the best integration of interior and exterior sciences, which summarizes CosmoErotic Humanism. Evolution evolves because it feels good. 6 words. That's shocking. I mean, I want to kind of get that for a second. Evolution evolves because it feels good. And that is actually Shati. Shati, we got your attention now. She's not texting. That is awesome. Oh my God, ready? Okay, so evolution evolves because it feels good. So what does that mean? So that's what the text means when the text says, and God saw that it was good. That's exactly what it means, right? By Yar Elohim, God saw it was good, meaning the good, right? Talia, did I read that text right? Right? The good drives evolution. Evolution is the unfolding of the good, right? And God is simply the force of the good, which is the taste of cosmos, which is why David says, and it was Aquinas's favorite verse, Tamu ur'u ki tov Adonai. Taste and see that God is good, right? So it's simple, right, Ted? And it's all simple, my friend. And it's all second simplicity. Right? Renee, right? R-E-N-E. Am I pronouncing your name right? Renee, R-E-N-E? Renee? Right? Renee, it's a beautiful name. Renee, hi. Hi. We could trade names. Renee's a great name. If your name is Renee, whatever you say, it's just great. Right? So Renee, je m'appelle Gafni. Tu t'appelles Renee. Okay? So evolution evolves because it feels good.
It feels good to speak French. I know that because I live in France.
French, doesn't it? Yes. I know. It does feel good to speak French, right? Right? And it's so if we place our attention on the good, which is beauty, goodness and truth and beauty, the ode to the Grecian urn, Goodness is truth and truth is beauty, and goodness and truth and beauty are one. So beauty is the place where all of the opposites are resolved. The good and the true come together and they become beauty. And then that's Whitehead's object of all yearning, right, is the beautiful. And we've demonized the beautiful, right?
Why do we do that? What's wrong with us? Like, what is this problem that we have with pleasure, with beauty, with, you know?
This is really important. This is wow. This is wow. So what is this process, right? Says Andrew. Why do we demonize the beautiful? And it's the precisely same reason that cheap wine sells in more mass market production, right, than good wine, right? Because there's a distinction between what we might call the erotic universe and the pornographic universe. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to give you some information, right, which I got from, I wrote a chapter with Dr. Kincaid and Aubrey Marcus. We wrote a chapter in this new phenomenology of Eros on the pornographic universe. So the pornographic universe actually drives the internet. Pornography drives the internet, right? Yeah. Many advances in internet technology go through the pornographic universe. And the largest internet site in the world is called Pornhub. And they put out something every year called Pornhub Analytics, where they analyze, at what time of the day, right, which site has less traffic, more traffic, et cetera. And this is the point where basically everyone should kind of, look like you have kind of glazed eyes. You don't know what I'm talking about. So that's all good. So I'm just talking about Pornhub Analytics here. So here's what they point out. Number one, right? Romantic sites don't do that well, right? So romantic pornography doesn't do that well because it has this longer storyline. And to track the storyline kind of takes time and people are impatient. So the shorter the storyline and the more obvious boundary breaking that takes place in the shortest amount of time, and I derived this by actually doing a careful analysis. I read 3 years of reports of Pornhub Analytics. So it turns out that actually Pornhub, which gets, 85 million hits, kind of just an insane amount of hits. And it's not all hits of kind of despotic, bad, degraded people, right? It's not all these bad people, right? In other words, right? Pornhub is actually in the 18 to 24 range. It's equal men and women, by the way. So it's not also men. It's equal men and women. It's a much more complex issue. But what drives the pornographic universe, whether it's sexuality or whether it's social media, because social media is also an expression of the pornographic universe, is a surface hit that gives you an immediate pseudo sense of pleasure that's easy to digest, easy to understand, right? It gives you a quick hit and leaves you with a bad aftertaste.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like MP3s, which are compressed sound into bytes, right? and it actually reduces the depth of the listening experience. So something like that, and people want a fast hit.
And if you I was talking to Elena the other day, who may or may not be here, and Elena and I were talking. We both had a parallel experience that we came to independently. But I was delighted she had the exact same experience that she shared with me, and she's absolutely right. And I noticed it when I was 19. I used to hang out on 83rd and 5th Avenue, and I used to spend Saturday afternoons at the Metropolitan Museum, and you would watch people go from exhibit to exhibit and stop at each exhibit for 14 seconds, and then move on. But you can't take in a Rembrandt in 14 seconds. Art actually, just like wine requires wine appreciation, great art, like great literature, like great music, requires the placing of attention, and great lovemaking, right? Other than lovemaking for the first time, which has the pseudo-erotic allurement of novelty, but once it's the second and third time, you've seen that belly, and you've seen that phallus, and you've seen those breasts, and you've seen that nakedness, right? It's not interesting until you place your attention. Mm-hmm. And you place your attention, we were talking about that earlier, it's not something new, it's that you see with new eyes. And when you see with new eyes, you disclose new beauty, right? And so beauty comes from, beauty is disclosed by the placing of attention with ever new eyes. And art, right, which is the depth of true art, which discloses true beauty, just like a great and gorgeous piece of music, the more you listen to it, the more subtlety, the more nuance,
Yeah,
right?
there's no ending to your ability to appreciate it, right?
And the more you fall in love with someone,
Yeah.
right? And because love is not merely an emotion, love at its core is a perception, and the perception is of the infinite quality of intimacy, which is the beauty of the person. So if I'm with someone for 5 years, right, that's one level of love because I see and perceive one level of beauty. But if I'm with someone for 25 years, I'm not bored. I'm seeing with fresh eyes every day, and they're becoming literally progressively more beautiful, more stunning, more resplendent, more they evoke more radical amazement, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's shocking.
Yeah.
That's shocking.
It's the same appreciation that you have of an artist, isn't it? Like if you really love Leonard Cohen, then you're always discovering something new in his songs. So you fall in love with Leonard Cohen on an artistic level, right?
Which is
Or whoever it happens to be,
no, no,
where
no.
somebody else you might get bored of very quickly because you're not in love with that particular artist.
Gorgeous, right? That's gorgeous, Andrew. That's so gorgeous, right? Love perceives beauty.
Yeah.
Love is the placing of attention, right? To love is to place attention, right? And it's the placing of attention that generates love. The reason why do we love? I mean, just between us, this is please don't share with anyone. But I've often talked to people about their kids and the neighbors' kids. And they'll always tell me their kid is like beautiful and wonderful. They've got a couple of problems, right? They killed a cat, which was a problem, and a little vandalism, and maybe they, get a few other things. But their kid's beautiful. The neighbor's kid's completely obnoxious. And
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't even know why I'm friends with their parents, because how could their parents raise that kind of kid? What's the difference? There's no difference actually objectively between those kids, right, Jane? The difference is simple. On my children, I place my attention. And when I place my attention on my children, I see them, right? And James Cameron got one thing right in pop culture. He was intuiting something in pop culture that's actually very deep, which is, I see you.
Yeah.
Right? Avatar, I love you, I see you. I see you, right? And I see you means I keep looking again and again, and then you get more and more beautiful. And here's the tragedy. The tragedy is that a couple can be together, and they've been together, let's say for, I don't know, 28 years, right? I mean, just, some amount of time, some long amount of time. And you're like, wow, right? We can't see each other anymore. We become after 30 years, after 35 years, after 15 years, we become after 5 years. We've known each other for 5 years. We become blinded to each other. But no, love is not blind. Right? Blake got that wrong. Love's not blind. Love is a magnifying glass. Right? Love allows you to see more and more beautifully, more and more subtly. But to do that, I have to open my heart. And sometimes I have to rip my heart open to be able to see, right? Which is why attention in the original Hebrew is sim lev, which is the placing of the heart. When I place my heart, I see beauty, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just.
But it's not something arbitrary. You couldn't just do that with anybody. You see what I mean? I think of my wife, and I don't get bored of her, and I think I would get bored with somebody else. Well, so I think that the fact that I never get bored of her means that must be the kind of partner that one would want to stay with, right?
Right. No. I totally right, and I totally right.
Yeah.
Right? So let's make a distinction. So one, marriage is a covenant of attention.
Yes.
It's a commitment to continue placing attention, but it makes me cry. Right. In other words, we need to get married, and marriage can be, there's many different kinds of marriage. Right. But let's bracket that for a second. But marriage is a covenant of attention. It says, right. It says, I'm going to continue placing my attention on you. I mean, I'm going to tell you a story, which I shouldn't tell. When I was 20, I was divorced when I was 21 or something like that. Right. and I was deep in Orthodox seminary, and I had a teacher who was a brilliant reader of Aramaic texts, and he was my kind of guru master, if you will. And I went to him and I said, something about, that my wife and I had kind of lost a certain kind of connection. And he says, okay, just get divorced. I said, okay. And he was literally like my guru teacher. And he arranged a divorce within like 7 days, right? A religious divorce, which of course what we should have done is we should have placed attention on each other. Right. And it's and in a certain sense, right,
so that was the wrong thing to do.
It was the wrong thing to do. It was the wrong thing to do. And there are times where we can no longer place attention on each other. And even then, what we need to do is, right, when it's time to separate, and I don't think that was the time to separate, although that's what we did. And of course, that was obviously the will of the cosmos, and it also led to the whole rest of my life. And I'm delighted at where I am right now. So I'm obviously every place we've been, we needed to be. But even when we get divorced, when we decide we're going to move our attention from each other, even in that moment of separating, we have to learn how to place attention on each other in that last moment in a final act of love. So it's very, very beautiful. There's a text which says that the voice of God emerges from the two cherubs, right? And you and I have talked about that text, the two cherubs above the ark in the temple in Jerusalem. So the text says in Tractate Baba Batra in the Talmud on page, I believe, 99b, the text says is that when the cherubs place attention on each other, when they're in love, because love is a quality of attention, attention is a quality of love, blessing flows through the land. And when there's harmony between divinity and humanity, the cherubs place attention on each other. Then the Talmud says that when the temple was being destroyed, which means this disharmony between the lower and upper worlds, there was this glimpsing by the mystics of the cherubs, and the cherubs were actually placing attention on each other intensely. So the mystics ask, right, Talia, why are the cherubs doing that? It's a time of destruction. They should be looking away from each other. No, because there's a moment when we break apart, when we realize we actually have to take attention away from each other, where we don't want to move to hire lawyers and change locks, and then focus on the pathologies that happened between us, right, and demonize everything that happened. No, even at that moment of separating, we actually have to turn back and place attention on each other's beauty and bow to the gifts that we brought to each other, right? And acknowledge that we've paid each other our karmic debts, right? And actually love each other madly in the separation as we loved each other in the coming together. And the reason we don't do that is because we're wounded when people withdraw their attention from us. When I think someone's going to withdraw their attention from me, I feel radically assaulted and wounded.
Yeah.
And I'm so desperately afraid and violated. I feel like I don't exist. They're about to withdraw their attention. So what do? I lash out at them to seize their attention again.
Yeah.
There are three people in my life who shall remain nameless, who back in end of 2005, as a student, I asked to leave my circle, a person I separated from, three people, and a person that I fired. And so three people I took my attention from. And those three people, right, basically never forgave me for taking that attention from them. And then they do everything they can to attract my attention, right, in all sorts of quite aggressive ways, right, often in the public space over the last 15 years, right? But what it is look at me. You can't take your attention from me. I'm going to force you to pay attention.
Yeah,
right?
How dare you?
Right? How dare you take your attention from me? Yeah. And it's right, because it's very painful. So we need to learn to place our attention on each other in radical love. We also need to learn how to take our attention from each other in a way that's gentle and honoring. And we take our attention from each other, should be through a ceremony of a final honoring of all the attention we've given, a final placing of attention, so that we exit in holiness just like we entered in holiness, right? Yeah. Which is very beautiful, right? And that
is great. I think we don't know how to separate. That is, it's interesting. Like we can think about how to stay together all the time,
Right.
You know, and that seems to be the big issue. It's like how to stay together. But when people do need to separate, how to separate with love or with, you know,
How to
holiness, as you would
separate
call it. You know,
with
hmm
Tiferet,
yeah,
with Tiferet, with beauty.
with beauty. That's a
Right,
difficult thing to do, isn't it? I
right,
mean,
exactly. So and that's, by the way, if you're with someone that you feel would destroy you if you separated from them,
yeah,
then you're already destroyed.
yeah, you're
And
yeah,
I want you to get that, right. I mean, when I say you, I mean me, I mean all of us, right.
yep.
In other words, to trust each other is to trust that if we ever had to separate, we would do it with unimaginable beauty.
I think that's the difference between a mature relationship and an immature relationship, right? Because
It's everything, right?
because the immature relationship turns into a war, you know, almost inevitably, right?
Right, right. It turns.
And it's a fight, you know, it's a bitter fight.
I mean, when we make a wedding, right? So
Yeah.
we get a band and we get flowers and we make sure the napkins are exactly right and the invitation is perfect and the font is perfect, right? And we invite
Yeah,
our
the
friends.
font. Yeah.
And then when people get divorced, they do it in some back room,
Yeah.
you know, at the end of a hall someplace, with a lawyer, and then they go and get drunk afterwards, right? With one friend, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Been there, done that, Mark. Yeah.
right. I
Yeah.
mean, no,
Yeah.
it's tragic. So
It's
we need,
tragic. Yeah.
we need to be able to enter in beauty, and if it's time to step back, we need to step back in beauty, because actually life is beautiful and death is beautiful, and separation is beautiful and union is beautiful.
Mhm.
Rapture is beautiful and rupture needs to be beautiful.
So this is another interesting point that we
Yeah.
can connect to beauty is death and beauty are very close.
Death.
Something about like I remember hearing in Japanese aesthetics like you would paint something that had just passed its prime, that was no longer like in the prime, but it would just past its prime, and that was considered a woman who was just past her prime, or an autumn leaf, you know, something in autumn, or because that's more honest beauty than let's say all this sort of
Right. And I
sex
just
and titillation and you know the people in their prime who are, you know, so obviously like, you know, fruit on the tree, but
right. And just to say, just for our official position in the Love or Die series, a woman past her prime is a woman at 127. Just to be clear, I want to be very clear what we're talking about. So
right, right,
no one
right,
is
right.
confused about that. It's about 127 that there begins.
So no, so just
That's
nobody
what
will
I've
be
noticed.
offended
I'm
here.
just sharing. That's the only thing I've noticed. I've never noticed any tip before then. But having said that, right, and a man is somewhere around 119, somewhere around there. Okay,
It's
but
not 16, basically.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
clearly, right. But here's where it gets really crazy, right? So I've mentioned before, I don't. Maybe we talked about it last time. I remember somehow mentioning her maybe last week. But there was this woman I was madly in love with, Andrea, right, named Maury, right? And we shared a domicile, although we had different parts of the domicile. It was in a neighborhood called Kiryat Ono, right, in Israel, which is near Bar Ilan University. And I was sitting there writing my first of like 4 doctorates. I had like 4 or 5 different doctoral topics, and I would finish all the research and then kind of be done and be too bored to write it and then move on to the next topic. So this was when I was in doctoral topic 1, and I had
Is
read
that Mori, like EQ's
Maury.
lover?
Maury, that's right. Maury,
Okay.
exactly. And so I had to rent an apartment, and I was the only, they call it Ashkenazi, right? Kind of a Eastern European descent in the neighborhood, right? In this neighborhood I was in Kiryat Ono, everyone else was pretty much Moroccan who had come with the founding of the state. And Maury was an older Moroccan woman. She was about 80 years old. Just to be clear, I was, I think, how old I was, but I was, many, many decades before 80. And, Maury was strictly Orthodox. So I never shook her hand or hugged her. I mean, we never had any contact that was even close, but you couldn't not fall in love with Maury, right? Because,
Mhm.
I mean, she had such dignity, and her lined face, it had unimaginable beauty, right? And so we fall in love, right, when we cultivate, our capacity to see beauty. And I want to go, I apologize, I'm going to go one more step here. And I don't usually share anything that's explicit, right, of a sensual nature, but I want to break that rule just very slightly here, right? When I was very, very young, there was a woman who I will call F. Like, she's passed away. I would say, I was, very, very, very young, early 20s, in a space in between, right, relationships. And, she was 48. And she inducted me into the world of general philosophy and into the world of Eros. And F had a breast operation. And so her left breast was essentially broken, right, and cut through in a way that you would generally consider to be ugly, right, in kind of the classical world. And, she's died, and I haven't seen her in decades and decades, right? But, when I evoke her breast in my mind, I'm overwhelmed with its beauty, right?
Sometimes our scars are what make us beautiful, right?
Right. And that's so true, right? In other words, the tinsel beauty, right, of, what in America they call a Playboy model, is almost repulsive.
Yeah.
It's like, really? Right? No, beauty is subtle, right? It's nuanced, it's complex, it's contradictory. It's not a perfectly shaped breast, right, that's gone through surgery 4 times. Right. And by the way, breast work is a beautiful thing to do. And according to kind of the laws of the lineage, it's a beautiful and holy act. Right. So the great decisors of lineage, right, talk about cosmetic surgery as being holy and beautiful. And that's beautiful and that's good. Right. So that's a beautiful and gorgeous, holy act, right, to kind of sculpt the body in the ways that we can when it's appropriate. And right, beauty is also a broken breast, which is scarred through.
Yeah.
Right, a broken phallus, which is scarred through, a broken belly, which has had 5 children. Right. In other words, so we need to be able to discern beauty.
Yeah. Somebody told me something interesting, that like why women wear makeup, and one of the reasons is, the people think it's to hide their blemishes or what is, but actually the real reason is to bring out beauty, right? I mean, men could wear makeup too. Maybe they should.
I would say
that it's actually it's to bring out the intrinsic beauty. It's not to cover the ugliness.
Yeah, that first off, that's beautiful, right? I mean, makeup itself. Let's just, because makeup is about beauty, which is about the Sephirot, about the illumination of Tiferet. So let's talk about it for a second. There was a gentleman, right, who I had dinner with him in Oxford, and his dad owned one of the cosmetic fortunes in America, and we were inviting him to join our board. I won't say the name because it's a well-known name. And he said to me that his dad gave him a $250 million cosmetic budget. I remember this is absolutely true. There's none of this is hyperbole and added. And that he realized that the purpose of his cosmetic budget was to convince women that if they didn't buy his product, right, they wouldn't allure a man. And yeah. I said to him, wow, I've now met evil.
That's
and,
evil.
You know what I mean? He didn't come back the next week, and he's a good guy, but that's evil, right? I mean, that is cosmetic as a form of pseudo-eros, which is really, really rank evil. But there's something more profound, right? Which is what you're alluding to, and it applies to both men and women in different ways. But there's the British major who entered Bergen-Belsen, my friend, right, the concentration camp after the war. He published a book, and he writes that somehow the Red Cross, together with all of the food parcels, someone, right, had decided to send this huge block of lipstick. And he was there, this, very kind of proper British colonel, right, major, and he opens it and he sees lipstick and he sees how how gross. He said, why would someone send lipstick? But they put it out anyways. And he describes how the women, right, all went for the lipstick, right? I mean, emaciated women, barely alive, right? And the first thing they did was to place lipstick, right? And it wasn't an act of pseudo-eros. It was a reclaiming of life. It was it's hard to say without crying, right? But it's a reclaiming of aliveness, right? Because beauty is the currency of aliveness. And we have a right to be seen in our beauty. Every human being, right, has the right that someone should look at them and say, Hinach yafa rayati. Hinach yafa. Behold, you are beautiful, beloved. Right? Behold, that's a fundamental human right. And the cosmetic industry, right, is a pseudo-erotic hijacking of that primary human right. Every man and woman has a right to be beheld as beautiful. Right? And that's what it means, right? To be a lover. To be a lover is to see with God's eyes. Right? To be a lover is to see with God's eyes. And to love each other is to actually behold each other as beautiful. And today we've so lost access to that if we give a person a compliment, it's sexual harassment, right? And we were so dissociated from this notion of behold, hinach yafa re'ati, hinach yafa, behold my beloved, you're beautiful. We're so dissociated from that quality of Tiferet that we've invented a new word in English, and we call it leering.
Leering, yeah.
Leering, leering, which is I look leeringly, right? I look in a lewd way, which is somehow degrading. And you look at the literature. I mean, there's a book here. I was just looking at it the other day here, right? My friend Amiya Srinivasan, right? Writes a book, at Oxford, Feminism in the 21st Century, where she talks about kind of part of the corruption of the male gaze.
Yeah, the male gaze. Yeah, this is. I wouldn't mind talking to you about that because.
Right.
Because this whole business bothers me. Like this whole terminology, the male gaze. It's like there's something like almost castrating about it. You're not allowed to appreciate beauty. You have to pretend or something like that. I mean, staring at somebody in a vulgar way, of course, we should not do that either. Right?
Men have not cultivated this quality.
Yeah, so
right?
the gaze is an art, right? So there should be an artful way of gazing and looking at people, and rather than leering or the politicization of sexuality or.
Beautiful, brother, right? So we need to teach our sons how to appreciate beauty. Right. In other words, tragically, the Me Too movement overreached, but it wasn't entirely wrong. In other words, male boundary breaking is real, right? Mm-hmm. And the leering male gaze is real, and the degrading male gaze is real, and the male gaze as a form of ownership, right, is real, right? And so we need to liberate the spark of the sacred in the male gaze until it becomes, whether it's male or female, it becomes Vayar Elohim ki tov, and God saw, and Goddess saw that it was good.
Yeah, right? That it's good. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And right. In other words, we need the ability to say to each other, oh my God, you're beautiful. Right? To say to each other, oh my God, you're beautiful. What kind of world is it? When actually we don't have the experience of being blown away by each other's beauty, which is why Solomon's primary verse is in the Song of Solomon, Hinach yafa re'ati, behold, you're beautiful, beloved, right? Behold, right? So wow. Now this is beauty, this is Tiferet, right? This is this quality of beauty, this illumination on the tree of life, right? How intensely beautiful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, there's more to say. I mean, to talk about this, there's a lot more to say. Yeah. I was thinking about this Korean philosopher Han. He was talking about how the culture considers the smooth to be beauty, whereas beauty also has a rough edge to it. It
Yeah,
has to be a little bit rough.
right.
Like we have a childish sort of smooth, like the Barbie kind of thing,
Yeah.
version of what beauty is. But beauty has a roughness. It has a depth and has dimension to it, and
No,
it has dynamic. It has tension. It has polarity. It has sparks, and
right. No, that's, I mean, first off, the image that you evoke, and we've talked about in the last 6 months in One Mountain, Many Paths, we've talked a lot about Barbie, which is up for a bunch of Oscars. And, we've talked about Barbie being the evocation of culture, declaring that there's no love story, that Barbie and Ken is not real. And we've probably spent 5 or 6 hours reading that movie as a text of culture. So let me perhaps add something to this. And for Krista and Kathy Brownback, this is for you. Okay. So in the beginning of the Barbie movie, it says, Ken only has a good day, but he's only alive in the warm gaze of Barbie. Barbie has a good day every day. So Ken is saying, I only feel alive when Barbie loves me.
yeah.
And love is the place.
But Barbie doesn't need Ken.
But Barbie, so the movie links attention and love, and Ken in the movie is the person who stands for the ontology of the love story, which is, of course, the movie mocking the love story because it places the ontology of the love story in the mouth of patriarchy, right? Ken is patriarchy, right? And it's only Ken, patriarchy, who affirms the love story, which is really a kind of parroting of Foucault. Love is really just a form of power. But actually, Ken's got it right. Ken's actually right. He's actually right. Ken only is alive in the gaze of Barbie because it's only in the gaze and the intention of loving each other that we become alive. Barbie, who says there is no Barbie in Ken, Barbie who says it's girls' night every night, right? Barbie who says, why would you possibly stay over, right? Barbie says Barbie doesn't love Ken. It doesn't mean this Barbie loves this Ken. There is no Barbie and Ken love story.
Barbie just loves herself and people, and
Barbie doesn't even love herself.
Reproduction of herself.
Right, but so Barbie is exactly what you're describing so beautifully. Barbie is not beauty. She's actually this kind of superficial, and I love your word, the superficial smoothness, right? There's no jagged edge. There's no scar. There's no samskara, right? There's no crookedness. There's no crookedness that struggles to be straight. There's no contradiction that becomes paradox, right? There's no polarity that becomes a new potency. There's just this smoothness, which actually is repulsive.
Yeah.
Right. So it's wow. And so the grace of seeing each other's full beauty, right? I mean, just like we can give each other, I mean, we could talk for hours, but I think we've captured, together at least the essence of the wholeness, right? Of shalom, wholeness, one name of this Sephirot that we said in the beginning of this illumination, emet, truth, a second name, Tiferet, beauty, a third name, right? And in the lineage, they talk about what they call shalom bait. And shalom bait is usually interpreted as the peace in the house, meaning, take psychology courses to make sure you don't argue with each other and kind of keep kind of a general pseudo harmony in the house. Houses are definitely kind of pseudo harmonies, but really shalom is beauty. So it means we're blown away again and again by each other's beauty, and it's always for the first time because I'm always seeing with new eyes, right? And it's not, again, I just want to say the sexual models the erotic. Our love lists are too short. So when I see Andrew, I don't say, oh, God, there's Andrew again. I say, oh, wow, there's Andrew. He's a little tired. He kind of trimmed his beard. He got a little glint as an eye. He's a little depressed, but he's kind of open and he's right. And he got through the week and the debates about education. Sorry about that, right? In other words, right? We kind of, right? You get this, there's this new Andrew that shows up that never existed before. And I get the honor, the delight, the pleasure of encountering, perceiving, seeing, being enlivened by, right? And I can say, behold, you're beautiful, beloved, right? Behold, behold, right? And that's what we have to be to each other, right? We have to be celebrators of beauty. You know, I'm reading, I'm reading a little bit on here, you know, the unread D.H. Lawrence. This is the Cambridge
Oh, I
edition.
love D.H. Lawrence. Yeah.
This is the Cambridge edition, not of his published work. It's his kind of casual writing. It's called Sketches of Etruscan Places. Etruscan meaning ancient Italy, and
Yep.
other Italian essays.
Yeah,
right?
I read that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a wild book, right? It's a beautiful book. So he's got this one line, which we talked about a few minutes ago, and he says, he talks about divination. He says, if you live by a personal God, you pray to him. If you're rational, you think things over. But it all amounts to the same thing in the end: prayer or thought, or studying the stars, or watching the flight of birds, or studying the entrails of the sacrifice. It's all the same process of divination. And what's divination, right? Seeing the divine. He said, all it depends on is the amount of it's truth, emet, truth, sincere religious concentration you can bring to bear on your object. An act of pure attention, if you are capable of it, will bring, right, its own answer, right? And that's
it. That's everything.
It's everything, right? And really, I mean, at its very core, right, I would say that, and what's the best way to say it, is that in some sense, love, right, McClatchy, right, the poet, love is the quality of attention that we pay to things. Love is the quality of attention that we pay to things, right? And to be a master is to be a master of attention. And that's why I give you a hard time, Shati, right? I say, wow, place your attention. And it's like, it's everything. My capacity to decide to place my attention. When I'm exhausted, I place my attention on my exhaustion, I rest in it, and then I place my attention again. Right? Right? In other words, I've got to decide to live life. And I live life by surrendering and letting life live me. And I let life live me by falling in love. And I fall in love by placing attention. And I disclose the infinite beauty of reality. Right? And I write a love letter to reality. Right? So what a delight to be in this illumination, to be in this beauty of the tree of life, and to be in the beauty of this conversation. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. And maybe can we do just our you know, and you keep not, so next time you got to have that guitar. Claire, we got to check on, I'm going to chant this time, but next time, Claire, you got to make sure that Andrew got his guitar. He keeps promising us to play. Okay. But for now, right. So maybe we just, if we can, we'll end with a chant. And next time Andrew plays. So I'm just going to hold on. I'm going to do one thing here. We'll everyone just mute for a second. And here's the chant. If we can turn it to on there, audio, whoever can do that, if someone can.
We can't do that, Mark. If you want.
Okay, we're fine. That's okay. So the words are Hinach Yafa Ra'eti, Hinach Yafa. From Solomon, behold, you are beautiful, beloved. Behold, behold. Hinach Yafa Ra'eti, Hinach Yafa. Hinach Yafa Ra'eti, Hinach Yafa. Behold, you are beautiful, beloved. Behold, behold. Behold, you are beautiful, beloved. Behold, behold. We can sing to each other, right? I can sing to Andrew. Behold, you are beautiful, beloved Andrew. Behold, behold, we place our attention on Andrew. Behold, you are beautiful, beloved. Behold, behold, we place our attention on Jacqueline. Behold, you are beautiful, beloved. Behold, 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 you are beautiful, beloved Jamie. Behold, behold, Jerome. Behold, you are beautiful, beloved Zohar. Behold, 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 you are beautiful, beloved Ted. Behold, 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 you are beautiful, beloved Scott Jackson. Behold, 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 you are beautiful, beloved. Behold, 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 you are beautiful, Simona. Behold, 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 you are beautiful, Becca. Behold, 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 you are beautiful, beloved angel. Behold, 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 you are beautiful, beloved Miran. Behold, 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 you are beautiful, beloved Jonah. Behold, 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 you are beautiful, beloveds. Behold, behold, last one. Behold, you are beautiful, beloved Daryl. Behold, 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 we are beautiful, beloved. Behold, behold. Amen.